Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 168. How do teachers really feel about required team planning? So today we're going to take a look at team planning and how teachers really feel about this. I'm going to share a little bit about what it is, how I feel about it, and then I'm going to share some thoughts that I gathered from various teachers across the nation in a multitude of groups and kind of share some of their responses too, and also some things to really think about. Whew, I got to tell you, the last two episodes, I've been a little bit fired up, as you can tell. If you listen to episode 167, where I talk about where teachers are required to provide lesson plans for the entire year, which I talked about 5 detrimental reasons why we should not be doing this. I think it's very annoying. What I failed to do was provide you with a solution if that does indeed happen to you. So I do have a solution or two. Actually, I'll share the one solution that I have. I do have lesson plans for the entire year in reading comprehension. So if you are a second grade teacher, then you can grab these reading units that I've provided, and it will give you like detailed lesson plans following actually the Common Core. And if you need to tweak it for the Florida Core, that's possible as well. But at least it will give you a starting point and it will give you the plans that you need. So you can find that in the show notes. It's the reading units in my shop, Trina Debery Teaching and Learning on TPT. I also have lesson plans for the entire year for STEM units, which would cover all of your science content for the year following the next generation science standards. And that is also in my shop on TPT. So at least it will give you something to start with if that indeed is your requirement. Hopefully that will help you a little bit if you are in that situation. But for today, we're going to talk about what it looks like, how it feels, and how teachers are really feeling about the requirement of team planning. Hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey! So today's episode is being sponsored by my end of the year superhero unit. This end of the year unit is a great way for covering standards, doing academics to the end, having fun, incentives for your students, and getting some time back for teachers. That's the main idea, is that it has activities in every subject: reading, writing, math, science, and social studies, so that you can, lots of work that you can allow the kids to do independently, lots of reviewing of skills, allow the students to work independently while you are off to the side doing, last minute Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessments, or you're over there grading or doing placement cards or CUME folders, or all the things that you have to do at the end of the year. And your students are having a great time. You also get to participate in some of this fun too. So you can have fun with your students at a time where you want to scream. So it's really a great way to end your year, and it provides academics to the end, and it also gives you back your time. So fun. The superhero theme is so much fun because there's so many cool things that you can do where you feel like a superhero. I hope that you will check that out. You can find that on my shop at TPT at Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, or you can also take a peek at all my different themed units that can be used at the end of the year, or even for like a summer school. That would be a really fun way of reviewing skills. And that can be found at trinadeberyteachingandlearning.com/end of the year. So hopefully you will find something that makes it life a little easier. So let's get on with the show. So today we're going to talk about a required team planning session. Now, I say required because a lot of schools are going in that direction where they are almost mandating that you spend at least one of your planning periods a week planning with your team. Now, I always felt like this was a violation of my contract, and I wasn't ever a teacher that was a stickler about that, although I think I should have been. I think I became more like that towards like later part of my career because I felt like taken advantage of. And I think it's okay for us to have boundaries. So I'm going to say that. And secondly, I think, sometimes these sessions don't feel as productive as people think they're supposed to be. So I think that's frustrating. And then also some schools are expecting you to do it after school, and you're supposed to voluntarily stay until like 6 o'clock at night once a week, which is crazy. I think that's crazy. And maybe that prevents you from having to work on the weekends. I don't know. I just think there's so many things that feel wrong about it. But, let's first understand what teams are asked to do. So grade level teams are asked to plan for weeks or months of lessons that will help students master the standards. I want to clarify that a lesson plan is the instructor's roadmap of what students need to learn and how it will be done effectively during the class time. Before you plan your lesson, you will first need to identify the learning objectives. Then you are to design appropriate learning activities and development strategies for checking for understanding. In other words, you want to know how the student, or if the student understands, and how they perform on the objective. A successful lesson plan addresses and integrates three key components. It encompasses objectives for student learning, teaching and learning activities, and strategies to check student understanding. Now, I'm not going to lie. Lesson plans take a lot of time, especially if you are in a school or district that has mandated a specific set of lesson plan expectations. Here are just a few from my district. You have to have the standards, the objectives, the essential questions. And in some schools, you have to have the I can statements along with the objective, the essential question, and the I can, which always felt redundant because I'm like, basically, we are taking a sentence, turning it into a question, and then maybe an exclamation. Anyway, you have to have the materials, gradual release of responsibility model has to be evident in your plans, like I do, we do, you do. High engagement strategies have to be included and how you are using them, your ELA or ELL strategies, your IEP accommodations, higher order thinking questions have to be pre-populated. You can't think about them in the moment. They have to be written on your lesson plan. And the list goes on and on. So teams are expected to work collaboratively on creating these plans down to the outlining of the objectives, determining the intro or the hook, planning the specific activities, creating a common assessment for the grade level, developing a conclusion and a reflection, and creating a realistic timeline. So I asked teachers, and here is what they said. Now, the first one that I'm going to share with you was actually shared by a reading coach and who helps facilitate this process. So she says, I think a lot of teams like to do more of a jigsaw type planning where one member from a team takes a subject and plans it out and provides those plans to the team, kind of divvies it up, so to speak. However, that defeats the purpose of true collaboration and team planning in my eyes. I know when I was thrown into a specific grade that they had not taught, she said the team gave the plans to her and she didn't feel like it was very helpful. But like I needed more than that to feel like I could effectively teach the concept. So there needs to be talk around each subject. We have a unit plan and then weekly teams should meet and discuss the standards and collaborate, discuss how to get their students towards mastery. That takes more time, but bigger outcomes for all. I've seen team planning be super dynamic. A former team that she had then was so much more efficient with talking about how they were going to teach standards. But she's also seen where people have done the jigsaw model and there was no discussion, just here are the plans, do what you want with them. So I think it really depends on what people are doing and what they think is effective. So teams that are jigsawing, so to speak, people might feel like that is helpful because it does take the load off and you're not necessarily having to understand or do every single subject. For me, like, I can't honestly imagine someone else creating the plan for me because I don't feel like it would be specific to my classroom. And I always kind of felt like, what? And so I'm going to share a little bit of my feelings about it. And then I'm going to share some other teachers' feelings. So I felt like, first of all, I felt like to feel forced was frustrating for me because what I really noticed the most was that it felt more like something that sounded good and that administrators thought would help the teachers that were struggling. Like, it's kind of like, well, we can get our struggling teachers on board and we can make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But I kind of felt like, well, isn't this a strive for mediocrity once again? Like, what about your stellar, outstanding teachers and you who now feel like they have to kind of handhold or sit down and go over what they're doing, and like their creativity is kind of stifled a bit because not everybody wants to do it like that or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like it feels stifling for the ones that are beyond needing the collaborative help. I feel like it can be helpful for newer teachers or new to the grade level. It helps you feel like you're not completely alone and lost, which I think there are plenty of people that will sit down with a person and help them. And honestly, if districts would go back to paying a teacher to do this, I think it would be the right thing to do. Like, we used to have mentor teachers. And honestly, when I was teaching for a long time, I had my national board certification. And part of the certification, you got a bonus just for having it. The other part was a significant bonus for mentoring teachers, for giving a specific amount of hours, which I happily did. Now, I did it anyway, and that's what districts take advantage of. But once I realized, like, you shouldn't just be doing it anyway. You should be getting, compensated because you are giving up your own time. I mean, like, I am giving up time to my family so that I can help. Now, when I was compensated, it felt like, okay, that's at least a trade-off. Then when they took the money away and expected us to do it for free, I felt frustrated and angry and taken advantage of. And that felt so wrong. So I think that's part of it. So I think that's something to think about. But when you're jigsawing, again, you're just basically, you have to take plans from somebody else. It always just felt strange to me. Like, I needed to think through things on my own, and also coming together in this collaborative, supposedly, team. It was a lot of noise. I wanted to hear my teammates' opinions on how they taught standards, especially when we were really analyzing data. And I was like, oh man, how in the world did your kids do so well on, let's say, main idea? They did so well on main idea. Like, I must not be doing a great job teaching that. Can you give me some tips? Like, what did you use? What activities did you use? What approach did you use? What pedagogy did you, what does that look like in your classroom? And so that was helpful. I liked having those kind of conversations. I welcome those kind of conversations all day long because I don't think that the way I do it is the only way to do it. I think that there are plenty of ways. And actually, there are ways that I wouldn't ever want to do it myself, but are actually effective. And I'm okay with that too. But I always felt like I loved the idea that we were all different and that we came together with our differences and we shared. We took what worked, took what didn't, or, passed on what didn't, not publicly, but like to ourselves, and went about our day. But we were all celebrating how unique and special and different and divergent we were. And that really was a big deal to me. And I still I'm all about that. So I asked some teachers, I asked them how they felt about it. I went into a second grade group that I'm in, and I'm going to share some of the responses that they said. I'm not going to say names, but I'm just going to share. And I told them that I was doing this in a podcast. I'm going to share some of their responses. And then it also made me really start thinking, because one person said, I have a love-hate. No one class is exactly the same, so you have to adjust your plans, and the needs of your students are also so different. So it's hard when there's an odd number of teachers and one is always getting left out. I think this person, and I almost said her name, I think this person made a really good point. First of all, you do have to adjust it to your students. It should be adjusted to your students. They so often ask us to standardize things, yet differentiate at the same time, which is impossible. It's like saying we have to go up and down at the same time. You have to be up. You all have to be up, but you have to be down. That's what it feels like to me. It just feels ridiculous. So she made a good point about that. So you still have to keep in mind the needs of your particular students, your classroom, the makeup of your classroom, the ability of your classroom. Like sometimes classes, groups of students move along faster. Sometimes they move along slower. Those are things we have to take into consideration. When we're rushing kids through things, they're not really learning it. And even though we feel like we have to for whatever test pressure or whatever other ridiculous reason, they're not getting it. And it doesn't matter if we speed up, they're still not going to get it. We have to figure out different strategies. One time I had my teaching partner, this is before we were teaching partners, and she was excellent at teaching math. She was phenomenal at teaching regrouping. And my kids were not getting it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I didn't blame the students. I blamed myself because it was the majority of my kids that didn't get it. So I'm like, all right, something's going on. What is she doing? So I went to her and I'm like, Melanie, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I want to see what you're doing. Can you come teach my class? We'll get our para to cover her class. You come teach my class and I will watch you. Now, I had like 8 or 9 years of experience on her, but I didn't care about that. That didn't matter. I wanted to know how to do it better. If she knew, then I wanted the secret. So she came into my room. She taught the students. I watched. It was like magic was occurring. It was a beautiful thing, and it really helped me. And I was sitting in the back, like taking notes, basically observing, because I was trying to understand. And my administrator walked in, and I was like, oh, hey. But isn't that really true? Like, team coaching, like it just felt it was really helpful. So sometimes you have to humble yourself and you have to like be open to new ideas and seeing things in a different way. So that's just an example of that, but it was really helpful. So I will come back to that. I lost train of thought for a second, but I think something to remember too, when you're working supposedly collaboratively, if you're like breaking off into like pairs, then, and somebody's left out, then you need to be a threesome. Like it's unless you have a person on your team who does better thinking on their own. And I think that's okay as well. That would be me. I would have said, you can let me be by myself. Anyway, so I thought those were really good points. And then another person says, I don't mind sitting and planning how many days or weeks for a unit and general ideas for which mentor text to use, etc. But I don't sit and plan weekly with my team. I agree. Like you're talking about standards, you're talking about text you might be using, you're talking about strategies, ideas. Sounds great, but you don't have to get down to the nitty gritty of each, thing that you're going to do together with the team. That's how I feel. Then another person says, when I was at a school with a great team, yes, I do. I got so many good ideas with colleagues and we shared prepping projects and stuff for each other. But at my current site, I'm only one of 2 second grade teachers and I don't get along with my colleague who is 2 years from retirement and puts in 0 effort. Now, sometimes we feel like people at the end of their careers are less enthusiastic about teaching. That is so not true. I mean, sometimes you are burned out and you're tired, but that can happen at any year. And sometimes people at the end of a retirement, that's when they finally get to say, I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to teach however I want. What a glorious day that is. So, but in this case, maybe it is, rough, and it's not fun to plan with someone that you don't love. And sometimes we don't get along with everyone, which is also okay. So that can be frustrating and hard. She also brought up another good point is she only has 2 people on the team. I was planning with 13. The smallest my team ever was, I think, was 8 It was most of the time it was like 10 or 11, and which is an odd number. But there were years it was 13 second grade teachers. We had a school with I think it was like 13 or 1,600 students. It was insane. We were busting at the seams. We were even using the teacher's lounge as a classroom. It was crazy. So that's something to keep in mind too. When you're working with a small group of people, it's much easier to plan collaboratively. When you're working with large groups of people, you almost want to break into two teams. It's a lot of people. All right. So someone said it's not required at their school, but their team does meet weekly to see if they're relatively on the same pace. Someone says they love it. They've done it in a multitude of ways. We've done it where one person works on like a phonics portion of the plans, one does comprehension, one does writing, etc., while we're on the same shared document together. That cuts down the time a lot, and that's like jigsawing. So, we know how some people feel about that. I also love that just talking about what we are doing together and coming up with ideas, and then one person writing the plans down later too. I think it depends on your team and the dynamics, because I feel like with every new team I have been on, we do it differently. I agree. It really is different. And is it okay to do a jigsaw? Is that true collaboration? And then somebody recommended looking into adaptive schools. They have pillars for collaboration that are really useful for setting a foundation for team meetings. Also, people tend to hate planning when it's pressing against more urgent tasks. I think it's important for administrators to give teachers enough prep time so that we don't feel resentment towards collaboration meetings and we actually enjoy the time we have with our colleagues. I think collaboration planning is essential for efficient progress practice. Okay, so I think they brought up a lot of good points. First of all, there's probably better ways of collaborating. And it would be a good idea to look into this adaptive schools. And I do think you have to have the support of your administration. And if you do want true collaboration, then you are going to have to give them more time than a 45 or 50-minute planning period, or making them stay every day late after school without compensating them. So we used to have these things called PLCs, and we would have them once a quarter, and it would be a whole day, and they would have subs in the class for a day, and we would meet and plan. I felt like this was really helpful. I didn't feel irritated. When they stopped having subs and we couldn't get subs in the classroom, and we were splitting classes and doing all that craziness and making it more work for others, I don't appreciate that. And I think that is awful. But I do think when we have support, it doesn't feel so frustrating. Another person said they hate it, and I really wanted to know why. I have felt the same way, so I really wanted to know. And she says not everyone thinks alike. Sometimes you have to wait to stay together or be on the same page, which I think is so frustrating. I totally agree with this person. I don't want to wait. Like, if your class is ready to move on, you get to move on. So I think that is important. Another person said that they hated it. So those were some comments that were made in this particular group. Let me see if I can find the other group that I went in, which was a third grade group. And I feel like they were a little bit more, I want to say, open, because, and I don't mean that the other group wasn't open, but I think that they might enjoy it more because they have like that testing pressure, which I also have strong feelings about, and it irritates me. But somebody says, I love planning together. It keeps us on the same page. It's a great way to share ideas. My teammates are very organized. And I was like, can I ask why it's important to be on the same page? Because I can't stand that. It drives me crazy. Why do we have to be on the same page? I don't want to be on the same page as the teacher across the hall. She did it differently. I didn't like the way she did it. I thought that she was extremely strict. She made learning not fun. Kids would cry in her classroom. I don't want to teach like that. I had no desire to teach like that. I also had one-to-one iPads that I wrote a grant for. And so I could do a ton of technology integration that my whole grade level couldn't do. So it looked different in my classroom, and I liked it to look different. So that's one thing I have to say. This person said, it's helpful if one of us is out unexpectedly. Planning together helps us be sure we teach all the standards we have to cover and skills needed for their testing. We are both covering the same material, so we share activities and teaching ideas and share in making copies. It's two heads instead of one. And I'm like, I appreciate her feedback. I just disagree. I'm like, it's all about that test. And it just really frustrates me. And we all have to be on the same page and we can help each other out in copies. I don't know. That again feels like a strive for mediocrity, but we all have our different feelings about it. Some people said they love it. Some people said they hate it. Somebody says they love it because it was continuity for students moving on next year to fourth grade. So we all just look exactly the same to the next grade level. That's frustrating for me. Somebody said, I hate it. I love to ask my teammates an input and crave their suggestions at times. However, I feel like planning sometimes takes away our individuality. Everything must be taught and done the same way. Amen to this person. I totally agree with her. I think that it does feel like you lose autonomy. So it's just a mixed response. So I'm going to share a few more things. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think I'm being too harsh on the team planning? Do you agree with me? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you neutral? So here are some pros that I have thought up for myself, and also my a dear friend that I used to work with a long time ago. She shared her thinking. She's still in the classroom. She says some pros are that for new teachers who don't know what they're doing, it can be helpful. New to the grade level, very helpful. She herself needed it in situations because she was, new to that grade level, trying to figure out long-term, veteran teacher, but trying to figure out exactly what that looked like at that grade level. And that you can stay on the same page, yet we complain about being, exactly the same. But what she meant is being on that same page, it's nice to have the big picture view. So that's a pro of being able to see the big picture, but yet not staying on the exact same page, but just kind of understanding what needs to be covered in that grade level. A good starting point. So those are the pros. Also, sharing lesson plans is so much easier when you are relatively on the same page. All right. Cons. You're losing your identity. You're losing your autonomy. It feels like a strive for mediocrity. All of a sudden, you feel like you're a yes person to conformity. You're a reminder that you can't be trusted and make decisions. It's a peer pressure situation where it forces you to conform. When you go rogue, you have to hide. There's no differentiating. Your planning would occur with an administrative person like a person there forcing you to do things that you feel like don't feel ethically or morally right, which I'm going to share this one little thing because I'm reading Principled Resistance, How Teachers Resolve Ethical Dilemmas. It's by Doris A. Santoro and Elizabeth Kane. I just want to read you the first part because I think it's really powerful. Teachers who work in public schools face myriad demands for compliance from any array of powerful actors: school leaders, politicians, highly paid consultants, and textbook publishers, just to name a few. Within this context, teachers' resistance is often interpreted simply as insubordination or recalcitrance. I don't know what that word is. I need to use my context clues. We'll just say insubordination. However, teacher educators, educational researchers, policymakers, and school leaders miss valuable information about how to support and motivate teachers when they fail to differentiate the motivations that result in different forms of teacher resistance. With this book, we argue that some forms of resistance should be characterized as principled resistance, and we provide a new framework for understanding 3 principles upon which such resistance may emerge. Basically, they are talking about when things feel ethically or morally incorrect and we are pushed to do things we don't believe in. So it's like a book of stories of teachers that have felt like this. And sometimes I used to feel like that for team planning. And when it didn't feel right to me, I wasn't going to do it. And I didn't care what I was supposed to do. I went along with what they said. I wrote down what they said, but I did it differently. In my classroom, I did it differently. I wanted it to be better for my students. I was going to do it my way with my kids, not even my way, just different ways with my students, because my pure goal was for them to love learning. And I never wanted to let go of my why. So how do you feel? What do you think? So many different feelings, people. So these last couple of episodes have gotten kind of heavy, and they've taken a lot out of me, maybe even out of you. I don't want them always to be heavy. I want us, because there's so many, there's wonderful things about teaching, beautiful things about touching lives, but there's also things that are hard. And I want us to be able to be honest, and I want us to be able to feel supported and cared about and heard. So if you have a question or you have something that you'd like to share with me, I'd love to hear from you. I'm happy to answer your question, even on the air or privately if you prefer. But you can always reach me at tdeboree@trinadeboree.teachingandlearning.com. And I hope to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the show. You can leave your feedback in Apple Podcast. You could rate and subscribe to the show. I would love that. This one tired teacher is ready for a long nap. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.